If you're still hanging out, we're about to get started again with Amber Hinds at the top of this hour. And I'm super excited. We've had such great speakers already today, and we're going to continue to do that. I'm going to bring Amber on now, and I'm going to introduce her. Let me read her introduction first. It's always weird to be on screen when you're being introduced, so I'll give her the benefit of not putting her through that embarrassment. But here we go. So Amber Hinds is the CEO of Equalize Digital Incorporated, a certified B Corp specializing in WordPress accessibility, maker of the Accessibility Checker plugin, lead organizer of the WordPress Accessibility Meetup, and co-lead organizer of the WordPress Accessibility Day Conference. I'm a little tired just listening to all that she does. Through her work at Equalize Digital, Amber is striving to create a world where all people have equal access to information and tools on the internet, regardless of ability. That's pretty awesome. Welcome, Amber.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. It's so good to have you on here. And I know what it's like to just have to sit there and smile while people read your bio. So I thought I'd spare you that.
I appreciate that. It is, I know it is always a little bit awkward. And then you start blushing. Right. You're like, no, it's okay. They're supposed to be saying nice things about you.
Exactly. So I put your name and title on the screen if people are interested. And following up with Amber afterwards, you can check her out at those places, and I'm sure we'll have more information to share afterwards, of course. But I'm super excited. I'm gonna bring your screen up in just a second, let you have the floor. Right. But thank you so much for being part of the Amplify event today. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. Of course. So here we go.
All right. Wonderful. Well, I am very excited to be here. It's actually been really fun because I hadn't done much with Kadence, and I got a copy of Kadence Pro and Kadence Blocks Pro and all that, and I played around. And so we're going to do some live demoing. So this talk is about building accessible websites with Kadence WP. And I am on Twitter/X at HeyAmberHinds, LinkedIn.com/in/AmberHinds if you want to get a hold of me. But please do put questions in the chat, because hopefully, if I don't go too long, we'll have time to answer those as well. So I have slides. There are links in the slides that you're going to want to reference. If you go to equalizedigital.com/Kadence, it's going to redirect you to some incredibly long Google Slides URL. That is where you can go to get a copy of the slides. What we are going to do today is we are going to build a homepage of a website and talk about what you would need to do if you were the developer who got this design. I have to give a shout out to Victor Flo is the name, that has a free interior design Webflow website template on Figma. This is what I use because I am not a designer. I do not design things. But I thought it was funny. They made this for Webflow, but I used it to build a Kadence website because who wants to use Webflow? WordPress is way better. So go check this out. I want to give a shout out to them because it was free. So the first thing that we need to look at when we're looking at design is creating an accessible color palette. Now, in an ideal world, a designer does this when they create the design. The specific design that I am using came with a color palette on the style guide that had 3 primary colors listed: a gold, a almost black, and what I'm going to call a very, very light beige or cream color maybe. And those combinations, when I put them into, I use a tool called Contrast Grid from 8Shapes. It's linked on the slides. It did not give me a lot of options as far as what would be combinations that would work. I'm going to actually exit out of my slides. I'm going to be flipping back and forth between my slides quite a bit. So I am in Figma right now. This is the design. And so you can see the color palette has that. And they have buttons. They have the dark, almost black buttons with white text, which to me, I'm like, oh, that looks great. And then they have buttons that were gold with white text. And my suspicion when I went and tested this was, of course, that does not pass. So in this contrast grid, I can see that white text or even the cream text with this gold does not pass. It says DNP. And so what happens here is that we have to make a decision very early on. In an ideal world, this is happening during design. And if you or your company does design, then you want to make these decisions before you hand off to a developer. But if you are a developer, this is an opportunity to speak up, show your expertise, provide value, and say, hey, what we have some elements in this design that are not going to pass. So then what do we do? So what we do, and I'll go back to full screen here, is we start to look at, can we pull in other colors? So I used the WebAIM color contrast checker, which is also linked on the previous slide. And I took this primary sort of gold color is what I'm calling it. And I got two darker shades of brown, one that passes for AA and one that passes for AAA. If I can, I love to use AAA color contrast. And then I also got a darker shade of black. Now this gold did pass AA on that dark gray that's almost black, but it did not pass AAA. And I wanted to have a AAA color contrast. So I went in, I got some different colors. I rebuilt my grid. I like to hide and never use any combinations that pass AA18. That means that it could be used for very large text. So you could potentially use that for, let's say, a heading 1 or a heading 2. But on smaller devices, there's a possibility that that combination would not work, depending on how much you reduce your font sizes. And so I really like to just play it safe, and I don't even use AA large. I only use AA and AAA. So then I went into Kadence, of course, and I built out my color palette with all of these, which was super easy. And I am new to Kadence. This is the first time I'd used Kadence, so it's kind of fun to get to try new WordPress tools. So I want to talk through a few of the settings, and let's actually flip back over. I'm going to go to my site, which you'll be able to visit in just a minute. And I'm going to click on the customizer. And I want to go through a few of the options that I had in Kadence that I was looking at and I was setting. So under typography, for example, there is, oh wait, this is where you guys are going to laugh at me, those of you who use Kadence, because you know where all this stuff is, and already I'm forgetting. Let's see. General, maybe. Nope. Okay. Well, I'm going to use my slides for this then. We'll come back. All right. So there's a couple of settings where you can set what your content links are. So the standard is underlined, and then you can set link colors. Always use underlined. You always want to have your links underlined. You cannot use color alone to indicate something. So what you want in an ideal world is you want the underline to show up for any body links before they're hovered, and then you want that underline to disappear. You also want to have a significant color difference between, between your active and your hover states. So I've chosen a brown and a black, but you need to have that indicator that's not color as well. There's an option with the navigation style where you can choose what you want to do. And after looking at all of these, I decided that I think the best option for navigation to help people see that hover effect and the active is to choose the underline option in the Kadence settings for that. There are also different settings when you're building out your footer, where you can choose how you want links to interact. And let me go back to that, because that I definitely know where it is. All right. So with wanting links to have underlined, you really want it to be when it is body text or text where it wouldn't be clear. So a really great example here is in my copyright down at the bottom, I said copyright equalized digital. Let me just hover over that. The underline goes away. If I did not have the underline on this, even if it was just a different color, let's say someone couldn't see that color, or they couldn't tell the difference between that color and the color surrounding it, they wouldn't really necessarily know that this is a link. And so this is a perfect example of where we want to have links have underlined because it's very obvious from the surrounding text that that is clickable. When you have a list of pages, so like we have this pages and we have our navigation down here in the footer, it's okay for those not to be underlined because of the way they're laid out. It's the same thing with navigation up in the top. They don't have to be underlined, but I really liked this underline style that Kadence offers here. But something that I did notice, and let's just go in and edit our footer. So on my settings down at the bottom, let's see, I think it's under design. Then I had link style underline. Well, what I noticed was that if we add an underline here, what it does not do is remove it on hover. So I added this to the slides. What you're going to want to do sort of for the footer, because there's a few sections where there's not quite the finessing settings that I'd like to see in Kadence, and this is a really easy fix. You just go over to additional CSS and you can put in some more clear styles where you're saying what to do. So the things that I changed with CSS was I have my normal links are underlined. My list or page navigation links are not. And then I'm sort of saying, okay, on hover, we want these two underlined because they were not underlining on hover. And then on like down below, we want to remove it when someone hovers once we've added it. So there's just a little bit of finessing that you need to do between your different widget areas. But it's super easy. You can just add the CSS snippet and that solves that problem. So once I have set up, so let's say I've gone through, I built my nav, I've added my search, I've kind of done the layout after looking at my design. So I chose this homepage 2. This is the one that we're going to be building. And I have my header set up and I have my footer set up. So now I could just move in and I could start building my page. But what I really want to do is I want to test my global elements. So what I do is I get a blank page that has nothing on it. It's got my header and my footer, and I do a couple of different things to test for accessibility. The first thing is that I can use the accessibility checker on the front end, or I can use it on the back end. So let me just go to the back end here. So if I have a page, if you've not been on a page before, you would have to actually hit update. Even if there's nothing on it, that's what triggers a scan when you're on a page. And this is all free when I'm showing you in the free plugin. And so I can see right now I have 0 errors, 0 contrast errors. So I've set up my colors appropriately. Kadence is doing an awesome job. Like they haven't added any empty buttons or weird things that you see in some other themes, which is amazing. But I do have some warnings. So what I would want to do is go take a look at that. So if I go to details and I see I have a couple of different things. I have 5 links that open in a new window or tab. And that is my social media icons. And I set my link down at the bottom to do that. I have 3 things that are ARIA hidden and 3 instances of underlined text. So what would I do with this? A link opens new window or tab. These are all warnings, but the best practice is that you need to warn users. So there's a couple of ways that we can solve that. The first one is we could go to our plugins and we could activate this free accessibility new window warnings plugin. And now if I go to my home page and I refresh, I'm going to have icons, warnings to say opens a new window. But you'll notice it adds these on the Kadence social icons. Some people like that and they just style them. You might style them with CSS a little bit. We have clients where we've done that. But there's other people like, I really don't like that. You can hide the icon. We recommend not. So the other option to remediate this is there is a function that you can put into your theme. So I'm going to pull it up on my slides real quick and I'll show you basically what you can do is you could change the social media links from Kadence so that they don't open in a new tab. And you just do add_filter, Kadence_social_link_target and then return true. And that will remove it. There's instructions that I have linked that Kadence has for using the code snippets plugin. So on the back end of my website, I already have this. I'm just going to go turn the snippet on. I could just turn this snippet on. And now if I go back to the front of my page, I no longer have that warning. And if I were to click one of these links, you would see that it opened in the exact same tab. So what I love is that I saw this and I was thinking, oh, I really don't want those to open in the new tab. There wasn't a setting for this, but I just Googled it and I found a help thing on the Kadence website, which gave me that filter. I didn't even have to figure it out on my own, which was pretty awesome. So there's like little things that you can do, even if there's not an option or a setting. If I were to go back to this page and I were to update to trigger a scan again, we should see that all of those, see, we dropped down to 6 warnings. So all of those are resolved now. So the next thing I would want to look at is the ARIA hidden. And basically what this is it's saying, hey, these things are hidden from screen reader users. Is this okay? If I'm like, hey, I don't know where this is, I could click view on page, take me to the front, and then I see, oh, it's around the arrow. So how would I know if this is good or not? I'll give you the short answer, which is that I have tested Kadence's navigation menu and it is perfect. But I want to tell you how you would assess this if you see this, because sometimes if you're building with other plugins and you're pulling in, you might see things like this. So what I would do is I would actually inspect this code in the browser and DevTools. So I right clicked on it, I hit inspect. I'm going over, and what I am looking for is, so this is the icon, the SVG that has ARIA hidden on it right here. And what I want to know is this being communicated to people what this is about? In this particular instance, it's a little bit funny because this icon is here, and then there's also another button that's sort of behind it. But you can see right here, there's an ARIA label, child menu of blog. And if I were to even turn on a screen reader, so I'm on a Mac, so I'm going to turn on VoiceOver. Hopefully y'all can hear that, but if not, you can see what it's saying on the screen. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over to that element and I'm going to listen, and I'm going to make sure that it's not an unlabeled element and that I can hear what it is. So we'll just get in here. So there I'm on the blog. So you heard that I got to that. It told me it was a button. It was collapsed, which means it's not currently open, and it's the child menu of blog. So it was labeled appropriately. It didn't just say like subnav, which is like subnav of what? Because imagine if you had 5 of them. And so then I could also test by hitting the return or the space bar. And you can hear now it told me it's expanded. So I know that it communicated to a screen reader what it was about, and tab down. And then so that's sort of how I would be able to assess that. Okay, yeah, it's right. This is hidden because this is just an icon and they have coded in. Now the fast way to assess this actually is you just know, because I'm telling you now because I tested it, that the Kadence menu works really well. So what would we do with that? You can ignore these here individually, or in Accessibility Checker Pro, if we go over to open issues, and this is what I do, and I go to my fast track, I could then get these different things. So like the search icon, I know I've checked. This is the down arrow we just looked at. I could just add a global ignore. And I'm just going to go ahead and do this for the search icon also, because I've checked it previously. In the menu icon, what I'm doing right now is I'm reading this. We do have an open GitHub issue that we need to add images here. We're working on it, but I'm referencing these and I'm comparing it to what I remember from before. So I've added some global ignores, I go back to this page, oh, let's edit it. And, oh wait, it was already there. I didn't need to hit scan. So you can see it has 3 ignored items. Now there's only 3 warnings. And I go back and now I'm looking at underlined text. In this instance, I think this might be what's considered a false positive in our plugin because I think it's flagging off this A not button. It is actually correct to underline text if it's a link. So what I could do is, again, since these are in the footer, I'd probably go add some global ignores. Right now, I'm just going to ignore it on this page because that's all that really matters. But essentially what you want to do is you want to try and just check all of your global elements. You would do like I did where I turned on the screen reader, I listened to something. You would want to listen to everything that you have in your navigation menu. You would want to keyboard test, different elements that you've added. I can tell you the search also, I tested that this week and that works perfectly. So you don't necessarily need to worry about that as long as you're using Cadence's search. If you're putting someone else's in, that may not work. So you want to get your page exactly like that. So now we go back and we're going to say, okay, this is the design that we're building. What are we going to, how are we going to build this out? And we have to make some decisions. One of the things that I see that is a frequent mistake is people, when they need text not just to be this wide, they'll add like forced breaks. So let me grab, I have these blocks already built on a different page to try and make things faster. So I'm going to copy this block and we'll go back to edit our page. And so now we have a 100%. And that's what you want to see when you start building. You want to have 100% because you've already assessed everything in your header and footer. Now I'm going to paste in this. So what I'm using is I'm using the row. I need to fix my background because it's pulling off my other site. Let's see. There we go. So you'll notice something when I put that background image in. Let me go back to edit image. There's no alt text set on this. But this image is a background image. It's purely decorative. We don't need alt text on everything. We only need alt text on images that provide important meaning or information. And in fact, I'm pretty sure this is correctly loaded as a background image. So when I was talking about, we don't want people, you don't want to add like shift return or HTML BR tags. And the reason why is those can be read out and be really disruptive to someone on a screen reader. So how I handled this is that I actually used a section inside, and I can maybe open the, so you can see I have a section inside the section, but I added a max width in order to get my desired layout. So that's something that will then control this with the CSS without adding unnecessary noise for a screen reader user. So I'm just going to pop a few of these sections in that I built. Let's put another one down here. All right, so this is the next section that we had in our design was this 3-column section, and it has read more links. Now, if I go back to my page and I were to hit update, it's going to scan what I've added so far. And this is the thing, you can really, one of the important things, you don't have to do it midway through a page like we're doing right now, but what I would encourage people to do is accessibility check each page as you build it. Don't leave it until the end, because then you have to go back and you're like, okay, well now I have to check all 12 pages. Or if it's a really big website, maybe you had 30 pages that you had included in your design, and now you have to go back and check them all. It's much better to test as you're going. So what you would want to do is, sort of move through those. So this had read more in the design, and you can notice now that I've scanned, I have 4 errors and 1 warning, whereas I had 100% before. So let's just check it out and see what problems came up. So first of all is 3 ambiguous anchor text. It's sort of flagging on this arrow, but I know that it's flagging because of the read more, it's showing that. And you can also see in here, some of the link text right there, read more. If you weren't sure too, you can always, again, right, like view on page and it'll highlight it for you. That's what it is. So one of the things that I love about this Kadence button block, it's the buttons ADV, so advanced. First of all, it helped me make that arrow, which is super handy because I was like, man, how am I going to do that without coding? Because I wanted to do everything in the thing. So that was cool. But if I click on the button on the advanced tab, there is add ARIA label. And this would allow us to add an alternate text that provides more meaning for people. So it can still just visually say read more, but a screen reader user will get the context. So I thought this was super cool. So I'm just going to add some of this in. I'm saying read more about projects for this one. I'm going to go to the next one, and I'm making this up, you know, but advanced tab, read more about interior work, realization, read more about realization, I guess. So I'm just giving that connection there. Okay. So I've added my ARIA labels. I could even hit update if I just wanted to check and make sure it worked. And that should trigger to scan the page. Hey, look, we got down. Now we only have one error. Incorrect heading order. This is an interesting one. Project plan. Okay, so here's what I did. I did something that is really common that we see in audits, and I did it on purpose because people do this all the time. This design had very small text for these 3 column sections for the headings. It doesn't have the H2 text. And so what I did was what we see frequently that developers doing is they just say, oh, this is the same size as and style as the H4. So I'm just going to set it as an H4, and that will give it all of the CSS that it needs to have. The problem is that screen reader users use headings to understand the page. And when you create an outline format that is not in the right order, it can be really confusing for people. So I'm going to actually show you on the front end of this. Let's hit refresh. And you can, by the way, go to this cadence.equalizedigital.com. It's live and public, so you can watch there and hit refresh along with me if you want to inspect things. But there is a free browser extension I really like called Headings Map. And if I click this, this sort of shows me what the structure of the page is. So it's right now we have heading 1, let your home be unique. Then it goes heading 4, project plan, heading 4, interior work, heading 4, realization, heading 2, footer, which is a hidden heading that I added, which I could show you guys later if anyone's interested in that. But it's jumping, and it's not really creating the outline that we want it to have. So what would we do here? There's a couple of ways that we can address this. One is we could decide that we are just going to make these heading 2s in order to say, you know, if that's what makes sense in the meaning of the page. And, you know, probably you'd want to look at your full design and understand what the outline format is about that. Or we could make them heading 3s so that they're grouped together with a heading 2 above them. And that's sort of what I am leaning on. But what do we do about the fact that the heading 3 is, or the heading 2 that I want to like add information isn't in the design? Well, there is a really handy plugin, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick let's see if I can do it in here. I might have to put it in here and then move it. So let's just stick a heading. We're going to stick a heading 2 in, and I'm going to call it learn. I don't know. We're just going to call it learn more about us for now. How we work. How about that? How we work. It would need to be a heading to make sense for all of these. I don't actually want it in this container. That's a little weird. So I'm going to go to my outline. Sometimes Gutenberg is not my friend. And so I just have to move things around. Let me move it down, but then I'm going to move it back up by moving this one down. Okay. And it doesn't actually matter, but I'm going to center it because I'm going to center it. So you could talk to them and say, okay, this needs to be here, but maybe we actually only want to add context that helps convey something to people who are blind about this section and where they are, but people who are sighted are going to have this context because they're going to know that visually it's all designed in the same way. And so it all groups together, if that makes sense. So there is another plugin that I really love called Screen Reader Text Format. And what you can do is you can enter any text in the block editor, highlight it. And when you have this installed and it's free, you click the little down arrow for the more toolbar. And then you could say screen reader only. Now we have this how we worked as an H2. It's only visible to screen readers. And when I click off, in fact, you'll see that it disappeared. And then I can change these to H3s. And let's say, you know, well, we really did still need them. They got a little bigger when I did that. We could then, you know, set whatever size they're supposed to be. I don't remember. I'm going to call it a pixels, which is really bad. Don't design with pixels. But anyway, right, we could make them smaller that way, or we could make them smaller. I'm just going to set them all to medium, whatever it would be. So you'd go back and you'd make them the right size. So now they have the correct heading level, but they also have the right size. So if I hit update again and I go to the front end of my website and I hit refresh, you can see that heading is not there. However, if I use my fancy heading map extension, it is there, how we work. And these are 3 sub items under how we work. So that's another thing that as a developer, you kind of want to think about, and it's super easy to do, you know, within the block editor, especially with that screen reader text format. And also this has a bonus of being really good for SEO because Google uses headings and the order of headings in order to understand how things are on the page. Let me go back and I'm going to drop a few more of my sections in here. So copy that one, paste it in. So this next section was a 2-column section, and it has an image. I need to get my image. I'm pasting off of a local dev site, so it's, there we go. All right. It has an image on the right. Oh, wait. I did that wrong. Not a background image. This is the image. Try again. All right. So it has an image on the right, and on the left, it has a column, and it had this thing, which I did something that I've seen people do a lot. Let's go look at the design for a second. It has a phone icon to the left, and then it has the phone number and the text, call us anytime. And it's really tempting to use an icon block. And I see this a lot of times where people do that. So the way I built this initially was I used this, it's super neat. The Kadence list item, icon list, I think. Let's get up to it. There we go. The Kadence icon list, because it made it really easy for me to just grab this phone icon. I added a little bit of custom CSS. So if I update the page, you'll see it has the right background and stuff for the design. But let's talk about why this isn't a good idea when you only have one item. If you have a list, so this is called a list block. So if you have a list, then you should use the Kadence icon list block. If you only have one item and you just want an icon to the left of something, it's not really good because it creates a lot of extra noise for a screen reader user. And it can also be confusing because lists, and this is correctly coded as a list, they are read out and announced as lists, and people expect to hear more than one thing in a list. So for example, I turn voiceover back on. And I'm just going to start at the top of this paragraph and I'm going to have it read out. And you can read what it's saying on the screen or hopefully hear. All right, so you heard that it said list one item, and announce the image and that sort of stuff. And so that's really not a great user experience. So what would I do instead? What I would do instead of using this block, which is a cool block if you have more than one item. Oh, wait, let's turn off. Is I would actually get rid of this block. And instead, I would use Cadences. And again, I got to switch. There we go. So I added the SVG support so I can use SVGs because they're better for that. Again, this is decorative image, so I'm leaving the alt text. I don't want the alt text to be filled in. So I'm pasting it in and I'm just using that same sort of grid, the row layout, and I've set it and I've just set where I want on the width and that sort of stuff and put the information in. So now instead, if I go back to the front end and we listen to this, oh, I probably needed to add some space there. Let's go fix that. Row layout, advanced. I don't know what this is supposed to be in the design, but we're just going to call it extra, extra small. Update. We don't need that. I really like how easy it is to do the margins and padding. Maybe it needs to be bigger than that, but for now, we're not matching the design perfectly. So let me turn the voiceover back on. All right, we're going to just listen again at this part. All right, so you notice it didn't tell me list. It didn't say one item. It also didn't even tell me there's an image there because I left the alternative text blank. This is a much better listening experience. It's a little weird that it says call US. I don't know why VoiceOver is doing that instead of saying us. Normally, I only see that when it's all caps. It's not all caps. It is properly cased. Maybe if it's because of the title or the capital letter on the U. So maybe if it was more like a sentence, like call us anytime, it would probably read it out properly. But anyway, so that is a frequent mistake that we see people making. And you just want to think about doing things a little differently, like use the grid. Don't try and cheat by using the list block, unless it is a list. If it's a list, and that block is fabulous. Let's see. I can just pop a few more things in. Maybe I'll get more than one. Okay. Turn voiceover on. I'll just put, all right, up to this one. All right. No, it didn't copy. Try again. There we go. We're gonna try and fix these real quick. Maybe not. Oh, it doesn't want to select for me. All right, well, we're going to ignore the broken images because I pasted off a different site. We'll get it to figure out. And then what I actually want to get down to is one more block down here, which is this one. All right, so I want to talk about in this design, we see this a lot. There are stats. It says 12 really big years of experience, 85 successful projects, 15 active projects, 95 happy customers, and the numbers are really big. So some of the ways I want to talk about first, the ways people do it that are not super great. So one is they say, this is big. This is a heading. Let's make this an H2. And then they'll make a paragraph here. So that's what I've done here. And what happens is, oh, we need to hit update. Update. Refresh. So if we go down here, we have our block. It looks right. But if I turn on voiceover again, all right, so what it did was it's, of course, telling me heading level 2, 12 years of experience. Heading level 2, 85. Successful projects. Not very helpful, right? So what we want to do is we want to not have it in a heading, especially because, let me open. So you can see one of the ways that people use to navigate with the screen reader is they use the headings. And you can see in here that I can see 12 and 85. Well, 12 and 85 doesn't tell me anything. It's not really a heading. It's actually a combination of the sentence. So there's two things you could do, which is you could go back, and what I've done on this instead, and you can inspect this, is it's just one paragraph, and I've used the highlight feature in the block to highlight it. So if we were to click on that, you'd see, but then what I did was on the container element, I went to the advanced tabs in Kadence and I went to custom CSS and I added some styles. If I gave this this container a class of stats, and then I said, if it's mark, that's what mark is, the tag that gets put on these paragraphs. And I just said, make it bigger, make it have this color, like those sorts of things. And I put that on the container around it. So now it reads as one sentence and it wouldn't show up in the headings list, but it still has the styles I need. And it's in a single paragraph tag without a break or having separate paragraph tags that would cause a weird pause. But this could actually be even better. And I know I'm running on time. I'm paying attention. I'm going to do it. So what I did, and I'll put this in, I won't show you, but I'll just quickly explain. And then if you want to go listen to it with a screen reader on your own, you can. I added hidden screen reader text for heading, H2, why us, or whatever it might be, right? So this has context. And I also actually put these in a list. So they're all grouped together because these are like the 4 reasons why you might hire them. And then I did the same thing. I love this feature in Cadence. I just went to custom CSS and I changed my list to not have a bullet and to display them in a grid, just like 4 columns, right? So this would provide an even better user experience. And I will update this page. So if you go on it on your own, you can see it. So jumping back to my slides. So I was talking about don't testing as you go. I have sort of a list of some of the things that I have talked about on the slides. If you want to reference, I'm not going to read them. It's the sort of same things that I talked about as we were building the page. A subnote on there is there are animation settings. I would avoid using them as much as possible. You don't really need content to fade up or fly in or anything like that. So my next steps, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but go check your website for accessibility. Use an automated tool. You can use our free plugin, or there's other automated tools like the headings map that I talked about. Tab through it with only a keyboard, like you saw me doing a little bit, like tabbing to see, can I open the drop-down menu? So you want to make sure you can do everything on there. And then try a screen reader. So there are 2 screen readers. If you're on a Mac, you have VoiceOver installed. And if you are on a PC, then you can download the free open source screen reader called NVDA. I have links to these in my slides. And then my other call to action is to attend a WordPress accessibility meetup. This is how you can get a hold of me if you have more questions. Again, in the slides, there's a couple of appendix slides after this, one that has links to all of the different plugins that I showed here. So I'm happy to answer any questions that we might have. Did we get any, Michelle?
We did, but first I want to say, before I take the screen down, if you're watching this and you want to be able to follow up with Amber later, take a screenshot, because I'm going to remove it in 3, 2, 1. All right. Give people off some opportunities.
That's a nice warning.
To follow up, right? It's like, wait, put it back. We didn't get it. That's what I always hear from people. So let's just share some comments and some questions. So Peter Ingersoll says that adding customization so that tools like Accessibility Checker and Kadence work better together is very helpful. So he wanted to make that comment. And then
yeah, so I know.
Go ahead.
So I will say something. So like what is worth pointing out, and I didn't mention this, when I was talking about, going through the header and the footer first, and then sometimes there's things that we flag them because we don't, like, I'd never used Kadence before this week. I loved it. I'm probably going to use it. Actually, it's funny having like, hey, should I rebuild my blog in this? but like there are things that
you should.
Our tool doesn't. Yes, our tool doesn't know, right? And so it said, hey, here's a warning. Go check this, because that's what a warning means. So one of the things that I would recommend for people who Kadence is part of your workflow, you know how we have blueprints where we say, this is the theme, these are the plugins, these are all the settings I want pre-configured. Have accessibility checkers set up already on a blank site. You can ignore those things in your blueprint. And then when you start a new client site, they'll already be ignored, and you'll never have to go in and say, no, I know the nav menu is fine. I'm not worried, right? So like thinking about that as a way to like improve your workflow. But that said, like, I think we do have some thoughts about how we can add like import export features to be able to like, move ignores between sites or something like that. So maybe we can talk to Kadence and see if there's something we can collaborate on there.
There probably is. Steve says that the images do show on the individual post summary of the accessibility checker plugin. So I can't remember where you were in your presentation, but he just wanted to make that notification for people.
Oh, on the fast track. Yeah.
So Joe Simpson Jr. has a question. For new builders with Kadence, what's a starting set of plugins or tools that you would recommend for them to get started on making their sites accessible as part of their core toolbox?
So I have these listed. It was after my info slides, so I didn't show it, but there's links there. But the key ones that I put on every website is the screen reader text format plugin, and these are all free. Screen reader text format plugin from Reactive on WordPress.org. The attributes for blocks plugin, it only has like 1,000 installs. I don't even think it has a custom image, but it works really well. And it allows you to add custom attributes. So for example, if you want to put aria hidden equals true on something, because it's reading out and you don't want it to, that plugin is really handy. The other ones, and I lost my slides. Let me look and see, because I know there's something else. Accessibility new window warnings, that's our plugin. And that the code snippets one is one that I know Kadence recommends, because I found some documentation from Kadence. So that, like, for example, that function for making the Kadence social media icons open, that was used in the code snippets plugin. So I think those are a starting point. If you need really complex forms, then you might need a form plugin. I know Kadence has some forms built into it, but if you need it to do really fancy things, then you might need to have a form plugin, depending on what integrations you're looking for.
Absolutely.
But I think you could, like, this website that I set up, it has like 5 plugins on it. It has like the Kadence plugins and the 3 that I mentioned, and that's it. And I think you could build like a really full featured website without adding a ton of plugins. And it can be accessible.
Absolutely. Is the ARIA label native to Kadence, or is it added from a plugin?
So the ARIA label field that I showed on the advanced button block is native to Kadence. That was not added by a separate plugin.
Excellent. Peter wants to know, what do you think is the best way to communicate to developers how they can improve their themes for accessibility? How can we reward those who do so, like Kadence?
So my hope is that all theme developers watch their support forums and or they have I mean, I would love to see more devs having public like GitHub repos, because I feel like it's easier for people like me to submit issues there rather than on a support forum. But I would say something that I have been trying to do a lot is when I see that a plugin or a theme developer has released updates to do something, is I go on social media and I tag them and I thank them. Especially if I see, so like WooCommerce had a problem with their breadcrumb navigation being unlabeled. I had opened a ticket and then it got closed. Well, I didn't just tag WooCommerce. Like, I saw that the person who closed the ticket and solved it had a Twitter account. So I tagged him too. And I just said, thank you.
Nice.
I feel like we all like positive reinforcement, right? So
absolutely.
I think like, and the other thing that I have been trying to do better this year, and that I would encourage everyone to do, is take the time to open support threads, even if it's a free plugin on WordPress.org. Like in the past, I would sometimes test something and say, oh, it's not accessible, and I would just abandon it. But how is that? What if that plugin developer doesn't know? How are they supposed to make it better? And so I think if you see a problem, say something. And then what is most helpful is to be really detailed. Like just saying, this doesn't work. That's not helpful, right? This doesn't work for screen readers. Okay, well, why doesn't it work? It's missing, it's like the navigation menu. Like, if it didn't have what Kadence has, then you'd say, okay, it's missing ARIA expanded, and it needs an ARIA label that explains what it is. Like those sorts of things. I think the more detailed you can be, then the more likely that people are going to be able to actually improve and take actionable feedback.
I think that's true for sure. As the more information you give, especially if it's like, hey, this is actually an easy fix, then it's more likely to be picked up and run with. Not that they're all easy fixes. I know that. Five Figure Lifestyle says, if you have an already built and developed site that isn't great on accessibility, what would you prioritize as you're going about fixing it? Asking for a friend.
So I would start with the header and footer. You can do what I did, where I was saying for a new theme, like you can do the same thing. Install accessibility checker, create a blank page with no content, and fix everything that's global, right? So make sure that your navigation works. And then also beyond accessibility checker, because automated testing tools can only find some of the problems, they can't find them all. You do need to test as well. So, try out a screen reader, tab through.
Absolutely. One last question for you, and then one comment is, what is the one main takeaway that you would recommend for Kadence users to do to make the most immediate impact to improve their site's accessibility? You did mention meetups.
Yeah, so actionable items on sites. I would say check your heading levels and your heading order. And I mean this very kindly, but if you started with the Kadence template, they might be out of order. But I think that's something that Kadence has they've been very responsive, and I gave them some feedback. So I think that'll be improved. But I would check your heading order because that really can make a difference. I would make sure that you're using that ARIA label feature on any buttons or links that you have that are not meaningful. Meaningful links are really important. People don't understand what the word here means or learn more. Why would I click on that link to learn more about what, right?
What?
Yeah. So the fact that Kadence has those tools built in and you can use them, I would say like start with headings and meaningful links. I think those are really important.
Yeah. And add that screen reader to your Chrome browser so that you can listen to what your own site sounds like, so that if you close your eyes and you just hear the word click here, you're like, okay, now I get it. I don't know what click here means because I don't know where I'm going with that. So and the last comment is also from Joe. Amber, you're the best. Thanks for sharing what you do in the WordPress community. And I will echo that as well. Thank you so much for sharing with us today everything that that you brought to us. I've shared the slides in the chat quite a few times and appreciate so much everything that you've done and for taking the time to meet with us today. There was one other question. Somebody asked if you could list those plugins that you had talked about. So maybe if you want to tweet them or post them in the chat later afterwards, that would be fantastic because we do have another speaker coming up in just a couple minutes. So Amber, thank you so much for sharing with us. And we'll see you soon. Yeah.